For those of you who haven't seen me yet or heard my voice, my name is Christopher Parry and I work for Amgueddfa Cymru, Museum Wales. And I've been taking you through most of the sessions in Saesneg, in English, where my colleague Danielle has been doing the Welsh, the Cymraeg. But I am not alone today either. So Megan is here as well. Do you want to say hello to everyone, Megan?
Hi everyone.
There we go.
Oh,
Perfect, perfect. And Megan is your main contact for the Springbold project. We call her Professor Plant because she is the embodiment of Professor Plant. And yeah, she is going to be our guinea pig once again this week. So she is going to go through the tasks that we are going to ask you to do. So everything that we ask you to do, Meg is going to be doing the same, really.
hmm
But yeah, in previous weeks, in last week, we went over a few different things about the environment, focusing on climate change and how the Spring Bulbs project is really changing how we kind of look at climate change and can give us information on what is happening to our climate by focusing on the growth of plants. This week, we're going to be focusing on what we could do to change and to make changes and make good, sensible changes to help the environment around us. And so today we're going to be looking at what a carbon footprint is first and foremost, because some people kind of understand what it is, some people don't, some people might not have heard of it. So we're going to be looking at what a carbon footprint is. We're going to be looking at how we can help reduce our footprint and how your school itself can help reduce the carbon footprint as an organization, as a big building, as a team, really. So we're going to look at all of those and we're going to finish by unveiling the name of our daffodil, because if those of you who came to the first two sessions of our Spring Bulbs project, and for those of you who have been reading the calendar that we sent out and all the other information, you will know that there's been a competition to name a brand new variety of daffodil that we created in partnership with Esker Farm for the 20 years of the Spring Bulbs project, which is this year now. Well, Spring Bulbs is weird because it always spreads over the end of one year into the next. And so we kind of have this, the end of last year and the beginning of this year is our 20th. We consider it basically. But yeah, we have given the name to our daffodil and we've told the school, but we haven't told anyone else. So we'll announce it here and hopefully the school is present. I'm sure they might be. Hopefully they will be anyway, and you can all say well done to them. But first things first, the Spring Bulbs project. As you all know, what the Spring Bulbs project is monitoring growth and plant and temperatures and water levels and all that, and then putting all your data into the online database, and then all of that kind of mixing together over the years for us to get an idea of what's happening with plant growth and what's happening with all these different things. And so you were basically, the main kind of people responsible for giving us all the information that we are kind of using. And last week, we went over some graphs like this. If you remember, you might have remembered some of these. And what we discovered from these was that there was a general trend of the climate changing, of it getting slowly hotter, with a lot of variation, which is what you expect with the planet anyway. There's always going to be lots of variation, but generally there was a trend of it becoming hotter since the Spring Bulbs project started. And there was also a trend of the flower growth beginning earlier as since we've started as well. So over the 20 years, there's been some kind of noticeable changes, not massive, massive changes, but changes that if they continue the trend they're going on, they will be more large scale changes going forward in the future. And so, with that in mind, we talked about all these changes and about climate change and how it started, but we didn't talk about what we could possibly do to make changes, to actually make differences and to make good decisions. And so that's what we're going to be doing today, really. But before we get into that, we're going to kind of go over of what a carbon footprint actually is and how we can use it and how we can understand it and use it to make better changes and improve our climate for everyone, really. So, what is a carbon footprint, basically? A carbon footprint is a measurement of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Now, last week we talked about greenhouse gases, and I mentioned that there was one gas, carbon dioxide, that was most prevalent, most kind of dominant in the greenhouse gases that are trapped in our atmosphere. So in the atmosphere, these greenhouse gases are preventing heat from escaping after it comes into the planet from the sun. It's struggling to get back out because of this layer of greenhouse gases. Now, if those of you were listening last week, I told you what percentage of carbon dioxide made up greenhouse gases. Does any of you remember and want to put it on in the chat for me? So what percentage out of 100, what percentage made up carbon dioxide in the greenhouse gases? Do you remember, Meg?
I can see some people typing.
You do, yeah, but don't copy their
Um,
answers.
you're going to say I was copying now, but
You
I
are,
believe it
yeah.
was 96%.
It wasn't 96, but well done. 96% was actually the amount of coal, the amount of energy we derived from coal. 96% of all our electric came from coal. And the other schools are quite right. It was 80%. It was something ridiculous, like
Well done.
79.99, something or other. But yeah, so our carbon footprint is that 78%. I will take that as an answer as well, definitely, Plas Newydd. But carbon footprint is not just carbon dioxide, and that's the key here. It's a general name for all greenhouse gases. So that includes methane and other gases that are in the atmosphere. It's just because carbon is so prevalent in the atmosphere, in the greenhouse gases, that we name it that because that is the biggest contributor. So when we are looking at the atmosphere, we are basically looking at our carbon footprint and looking at all the gases. So the best way to kind of show you the different types of things you do day to day that contribute to these, because you do a lot of things that you don't realize will have a massive impact on your carbon footprint. So I thought the best way to demonstrate the types of things that have an impact is by giving Meg a bit of a carbon calculator. So there are loads and loads of different carbon calculators online. There's not one in Cymraeg in Welsh, which is a gap in the market that someone will fill sooner than later, I think. We picked this one, which we'll go on to in a second now, but a carbon calculator essentially asks you lots of different questions, and it asks you questions about your day-to-day life and your routine, and then it gives you a general idea of how much carbon you are adding, how big your carbon footprint is, rather. So the main and most important thing about this is not Meg's answers, even though they might be interesting, I'm sure. The questions I'm asking are the most important. And these questions are going to lead to what we do as a task in a few minutes now. And essentially, listening to the questions is far more important than listening to the answers, okay? Because they'll give you an idea of the types of things you do on a day-to-day basis that does have an impact on climate change. So leave me get this carbon calculator up and put Meg through her paces on this, essentially. Now, Meg, have you done a carbon calculator before?
I've not.
No? Okay. Okay, we will go through it and see what you come up with. And if my head gets in the way at all, I'll jump out. It's really important, and this isn't an understatement to say as well, that there are so many of these carbon calculators online. I picked this one because you don't have to register an email, or you don't have to put your real name in if you don't want any personal details. Online safety is super, super important, as hopefully all of you know. So make sure you don't give out any personal details at all if you do this in your own school or in your own time, if you're interested to find out. Just go on ones like this or similar ones that ask for no details. But we will get underway with Megan. And remember, don't focus on the questions, focus more on the answers. Oh, the other way around, sorry. Focus more on the questions, not the answers. So, Meg, I'll put your name in for you, Meg. Okay, there we go, Meg. Now, hi, Meg. Nice to meet you. I'm wondering if you are a male, female, robot, or other.
I'm a female.
You're right. We will move on. Now we're going to get started calculating your CO2e. Now you can see that CO2e, it means carbon dioxide equivalent. And
Hmm.
that's adding all of your greenhouse gases together to get an equivalent figure of what you are contributing towards the atmosphere. So the
Okay.
first section is all about your home.
Hmm.
So I know Meg lives in a massive mansion and she's got many, many bedrooms. So this is going to be an interesting one. So Meg, how large is your home? How many bedrooms?
I have 4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms. So obviously, the bigger your home, the more energy you might use. And the type of house it is really impactful as well, because
Hmm.
what type of house we've got? A single family detached house, a semi-detached, a flat, and a farmhouse or mobile home, which is you?
Mine is a single family detached house.
Single family detached. So when your house was built is a really big thing as well, because depending on when your house was built, it'll use different materials and be more or less energy efficient in different ways. So in which decade was your house built? So don't know, before 1940, 1940 to 60, 1960 to 70, 1970 to 80, 1980 to 90, and so on. Where are we looking?
I believe my house was built in 2001.
Ah, so relatively recent. There
Hmm.
we go. What heating source does your building use? Hmm. Don't know. Heating oil, natural gas, district heating, heating pump source, biomass, electric heating, solar, water, combination of several. No heating at all.
I believe mine is natural gas in my
Nice, right.
house.
You can see just from this list how many different types of ways there are of heating your house now. If we went back, like we were in the other session, to earlier decades, say the 50s or 60s, this list wouldn't be half as long, really. It would be dominated by fossil fuels. But now there's a lot of different options. But we've got natural gas. And if you remember from last week, guys, natural gas and gas is one of the fossil fuels that is still being used to heat most people's houses. And only last year did one renewable source of energy overtake gas. Does anyone remember in the chat what that one renewable source of energy that overtook gas, producing more of the Britain's electricity than gas just for last year? What renewable energy did that? Hopefully, yes, there we go, there we go. Oh, not solar power, not solar. It was wind indeed. So well done there. Person got wind. Yeah, wind generated 30% of our electricity last year, compared to 27% of natural gas. Does your house have its own electricity generating system? For example, solar panels on the roof.
Yes, we have
It
solar
does.
panels.
Now that I can tell already is going to be a big plus for you, Meg.
Hmm.
I can tell you. That's going to that's going to do well to your overall figure, that is.
Good.
I should say as well, if you don't know any of these, that's fine. If you don't know any of these details, and some of the questions are going to be more aimed at adults, drivers, and stuff like that, and some are going to be more general, like the house you're living in. And again, if you don't know any, it's fine. It's just to give you a bit of a ballpark idea of the things you can do to make changes. So, are you actively trying to reduce your electricity consumption, Meg? For
Yes, definitely.
example, choosing energy efficient products or turning lamps off, running washing machines and dishwashers on eco-friendly settings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure every kid in the classrooms across all of the chat now are using the eco setting on their washing machines. I'm sure they are. How many adults aged over 18 are living in your house?
I've got 4 living in my
4 adults, or will that outweigh the positive of the solar
house.
panels? How many children live in your house?
No children.
No children at all. How many pets live in your house?
No pets either.
No pets. Now, you might be wondering why it's asking about pets and why it's asking about how many humans live with you and all that. It's because the amount of people living in your house will will naturally kind of consume more or less energy, will eat different things, will do different things that have an impact. So the calculator basically judges, well, if there's this many people living in the house, normally they'll contribute this amount of, CO2 equivalent to the atmosphere. But no pets for Meg, no pets, no kids. Do you have a second property? For
N-
example, a summer cabin, timeshare property, or weekend cottage?
No.
Now, again, if you don't know that, ask your parents. You might have a caravan, maybe, or you might have something that's a secondary home or a holiday home, and that will add to the carbon calculator. Great job, Meg. You finished part one, right? The next part now will be all about your travel. Now,
Hmm.
I'm hoping, against hope, that many of the kids here will score well in this round, really. But this is really impactful to your carbon footprints because how many flights you take can really impact massively on the environment. So how many flights do you take part in a year? So round trips are considered as 2 flights per trip. And as the question concerns personal travel, do not include business trips.
Okay. I would probably say 2 flights. So one trip, 2 flights.
2 flights, 2 flights. Okay, so 2 flights. So
Hmm.
per year, yeah? 2 to 3 will go? Or one
I'll
to
go with
two?
that.
2 to 3.
Go with 2 to 3. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So flights to another continent now. So this is different types of flights. So you'll use different types of energy to get you further, obviously. So this is more medium haul. So this is 2 to 6 hour flights. But I'm guessing the earlier question was, I think let me double check as well. I think the earlier one was short haul. Yeah, short haul. So 2 hour
Okay.
flights.
So potentially maybe I would put that at no trips.
So all your trips are always over 2 hours long,
I would
yeah?
say so, yeah. And I'd
Okay,
put
we'll
that
go.
at maybe, yeah, 2 to 3.
And so then 6 hour long, no.
No.
Cool. And then what about your private jet?
I don't have a private jet.
Okay, let's move on. If Meg has a private jet and I haven't, I'd be fuming. So how many cars do your household own or lease? And this is a really big one. Most of you kids will know how many cars. You might not know how many flights your family takes overall, but you will know how many cars your household has. So how many do you have, Meg?
3 cars.
3.
Mm.
Oh, that is definitely undercutting the solar panels. That is. Oh, it can only handle 2. So yeah, so we'll try again and basically
Okay.
go 2 for now. But that's
Mhm.
telling you that you might want to, not a 3.
Mhm.
Some questions about your car. Now, again, some of you guys might not know this, but the importance of the question is more about understanding why a car is necessarily bad for the environment. And so this question is saying, what kind of energy does the car have? So the car necessarily isn't a terrible thing for the atmosphere, but the energy that it uses to power itself is what's bad. So we've got a few different options here: fossil fuel, petrol, gas, or diesel; biofuel, combustion; a mid-hybrid, which means that sometimes it's got fuel and sometimes it's got electric; a plug-in hybrid, again, which is the same thing. You use a plug to power the electric and you can use fuel sometimes; and then a fully electric. So where are you on that, Meg?
My car uses petrol, so it would be
What about
fossil
the other
fuel.
two as well? Are they all petrol, gas, diesel, are they?
No, the next
Oh,
one will
there
be
is.
different.
Oh, well, we go for petrol, gas, and
Mhm.
diesel for now on that one. And now, how many miles do you drive in a year? So this calculator is in kilometers, but obviously we use miles predominantly in Britain. And so 1 mile is equivalent to about 1.5 kilometers. So
Mhm.
10,000 kilometers, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50,000 kilometers. How far do you travel, do you think?
Definitely less than 10,000 kilometers.
Definitely less.
Mhm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
we'll go with that then. lots of short trips. So if there's lots and lots of the school runs and not many long trips, then that's under 10, I would say normally.
Hmm.
You notice this question coming up again, guys. When was your car built? It's asking the date about when your car was built, exactly in the same way as it was asking about the date that your house was built. It's really important because newer houses and newer cars are built with energy efficiency and energy protection and climate change in mind, whereas older cars are not. So when your car was built really does have an impact. So is your car before 2005, 2005 to 2009, 2010 to 14, 2015 to 19, Meg?
2010 to 2014.
There we
Between
go.
them.
Perfect. And the size of your car, is it small, medium, large, or is it a van, SUV, pickup truck? I would love you to have a pickup truck, Meg.
My car is a small car,
Yeah,
so no
I thought
pickup
it would
truck.
be. Some questions about your second car. So this,
Mm.
we'll say this is the electric one, is it?
Yes, it's a fully electric
So
one.
fully electric, that's good. And is it small, medium, large?
It's a big car. It's a large car.
We'll go for large. Then we'll go for large.
Hmm.
Are you part of a car sharing scheme, Megan?
No.
No. Unbelievable. Now, do you occasionally rent a car? Now, so a lot of people, business-wise and trips, will rent a car because owning a car will obviously have a more longer-term impact on the environment, but renting it, so using it when you need, might help. Like, I suppose, getting a taxi.
Hmm.
So, do you rent a car? Yes or no? Never.
No,
No,
never.
never. No, never. Do you occasionally travel by taxi, Meg?
Yes.
You do. What kind of taxis do you use? And this is a really interesting question because it's asking you whether you use a taxi, so use alternative forms of transport, but it's asking you what kind, because basically it's on you to make sure that you pick in an energy efficient or energy kind of or a taxi that reduces climate change in some way. So you can look into the taxi service you're using and pick which one, or does you know which your taxis are powered by, Meg? Battery, combustion engine, mix of electric combustion. Do you even know?
I would say a mix, I
But do you
think, is what I
know?
would use.
But do
I
you
don't think I
know?
pay enough attention
There you
to when
go.
I book
See?
them. Hmm.
And again, a lot of people will get alternative forms of transport and they won't necessarily think about it at all. And again, you are support of that taxi service, you know.
Hmm.
If they are running on a petrol all the time and not changing, and you are paying them to do it, then you will contribute into climate change in a negative way.
Hmm.
So how often do you use a taxi, Megan? 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 60. I doubt it's 60 to 180,
No, I would say per year around 20 to 30, maybe.
20 to 30. Now, many of you might use taxi services back and forth to school as well, and so that'll be counted as well because I know lots of people, are off the public route for buses and things. This is an interesting one as well. Ferry. I wonder how many of you actually take ferries these days, because lots of people go straight to flights, I think, these days. But
Mm.
approximately how many days per year do you travel by ferry, Meg? Is it zero?
Yeah, 0.
Yeah, I would think it was because again, there's not a ferry service from Cardiff to St. Fagans. Is it?
No.
So how often do you use public transport? So this is a bus, a tram, or railway, or metro. So 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 7. I can tell by your face it's no, never.
No. No.
Right, okay, there you go. Now, obviously, using buses and public transport is really good because it's like car sharing. You've got lots of people traveling in one vehicle, so that one vehicle is reducing the amount of individual trips that those people might take. So it's a really good thing, public transport is, to help reduce your carbon footprint. Do you travel by foot or by bicycle? And this includes trips between your home and work, leisure activities and school and things like that. Do you never 1 to 2 days, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 7?
Unfortunately, never.
So
Or
never walk.
almost
I'm
never,
sure.
maybe.
Well, I'm sure you walk for leisure activities.
I would. I'd go for walks, but I definitely take more. car trips,
So should we
particularly
put
to
1 to
work.
2? Because I'll cover your walks, your leisure walks. I'm being nice.
Okay,
Do
thank
you
you.
own or lease any of the following? We'll go to now. And we're nearly at the
Um,
end here now, guys. And if any of you guys are home leasing a motorbike, I will be phoning the police. Motorbike, Meg, do you lease one or own one? Nope.
No,
Do you own a moped or a scooter?
no.
Nope. Do you own a motorboat?
No.
Now, if any of you do, then I expect an invite to have a day out on the motorboat. Definitely. And approximately how many days do you use? Did I click yes for motorboat then?
You
Did I
might have.
click no motorboat? I was like, yes, Megan's got a motorboat. And so this is the last thing. And this is perhaps the most important section for all of you guys at home, because this is a section that you have got a lot of control over. Because a lot of the times you guys won't have control over, the cars your parents drive or your family drives or the homes you live in. You might have an idea of how to change things at home to make it better, but how you eat and how you dress can impact massively. And so you having an opinion on these things is a really important thing, I think. So how often do you eat beef or lamb for lunch or dinner? Now, it's specifically beef or lamb.
I would say almost never.
Almost never. Why do you think, Maggie, that it's beef or lamb specifically? Any ideas?
Do they produce more like greenhouse gases, those animals, and maybe even the production of those meats?
Yes.
Okay.
Larger animals in general, like cows, for example, and like sheep, will need larger areas and there will be much, much
Mm.
more of them. And so they'll take up more space and produce much more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Whereas something like chickens, for example, farmed,
Mm.
obviously they're smaller, so they take up less space and they put out less greenhouse gas. So eating certain types of food will change your carbon footprint, will change what you add to the environment. Okay. So
Hmm.
almost never for beef and lamb. So you do not eat any of them.
Hmm.
How often do you eat plant-based meals? So for you, meals free from meat, poultry, fish, and seafood. So totally plant-based, no anything in them.
Hmm. I would say at least most of the week. So is there four to
Four
seven
to
down there?
seven.
Hmm.
There we go. There we go. What portion of your vegetarian diet is fully plant-based, meaning that it doesn't contain dairy or eggs? So less than half, more than half, all of it, I'm a vegan.
I would say more than half.
If you're a vegan, you won't eat eggs or dairy products at all. It'll be an entirely plant-based diet. And so Meg obviously is more vegetarian than vegan. And so more than half, you said, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you consciously choose products that are seasonal? Now, this is really important, this one, because this means you're choosing fresh food that is readily available instead of frozen, conserved, or imported from other countries. So, apples at certain times of the year, berries, mushrooms in autumn, that type of thing. Do you shop seasonal thinking about it, or do you just get whatever you like at any time of the year?
I think for the most part, I will choose fresh foods, but I don't know if I'm thinking about it too much. So I'd
Right.
maybe put no, just because I'm not consciously thinking about it enough.
We put no, but this is a really important one because obviously seasonal plants and fruits and veg in Britain are different and they grow at different times of the year than they do in other countries. So, for example, when strawberry season is in Britain, it's not the strawberry season in another country. And in winter time, it's not strawberry season at all for Britain, but we still see strawberries on the shelves because we're importing them to make sure we have them available. So not choosing strawberries at winter time, for example, would be shopping consciously seasonal and trying to reduce that. Because obviously, if you're sending in all these strawberries from other countries for the winter time, then it's adding to the carbon footprint and you are supporting that by buying and eating that. So we'll go no for now.
Hmm.
Do you consciously choose products that are locally sourced? So this means locally produced food instead of foods coming from abroad.
I would say I do. I look out
Good.
for labels.
Now, I would be really impressed if most of you guys at home knew where your food was coming from. But it's well within your kind of, it's well within your grasp to look at a packet or ask your parents or think about, well, where is my food actually coming from? How far has it traveled? How much is it impacting on the environment? And how much is it changing things? And so, yeah, Meg actually tries to be local, which is good. Do you grow your own food? This includes hunting and fishing, Meg, and I know you're a great hunter and fisher. So, yeah,
No, I unfortunately
no.
don't grow my own food, nor do I hunt.
So obviously growing your own food is amazing thing to do, really.
Hmm.
It's one of those things that can help reduce your carbon footprint massively because you are not buying anything, you're growing yourself, you're cultivating yourself, and it's really good in many different ways. So, which statement describes your attitude regarding food waste? Okay. So, examples of food waste are putting food from the plate, putting food on the plate but not eating it, throwing away leftovers from a meal, throwing away food that had passed its expiration date. So, I do my utmost to avoid food waste. I try and avoid it. To be honest, I don't really think about it.
I would say I do everything I can to avoid food waste.
Perfect. But could do more?
No, I think I do my utmost to do it.
Perfect.
I would say so.
So reducing the amount of food you waste is massively important because obviously if you're throwing away food, then it's being sent from other countries or being grown somewhere else and it's just going to waste and it's impacting massively on the climate really. So even to the case of like when you fill your plate up with food and then you realize you don't want to eat it, it's probably more sensible to have a smaller plate and then think, oh, I'll have seconds if I am still hungry rather than waste it.
Hmm.
But what do you do with food waste that still comes? Do you put it in a food waste bin? I segregate food waste. Composting. What do you do, Meg?
I definitely separate the food waste and put it in the correct bin.
Fabulous, fabulous. That's what I like to hear. So, palm oil is one of those things that you can read on wrappers and things like that. And it is really the production of palm oil has a massive impact on forests being torn down and deforestation happening, which means the forests of the world being devastated. And obviously, forests are helping kind of the environment in a big, big way. But palm oil cultivation is driving deforestation, as it says, of valuable rainforests. It is very cheap raw material and is used in a lot of processed food. And so, unfortunately, guys, a lot of the candy, crackers, cookies, and many, many other things that you eat will contain palm oil. And you can look at the wrappers and think, oh, there's palm oil in it. I'm going to choose a different product. As an example, peanut butter, I love peanut butter, but loads of peanut butter has palm oil in it. And so I always look at the label and try and find ones without palm oil. So that is what you're doing to get away from consumption of palm oil. What best describes your consumption of palm oil, though, Meg? I do my utmost to avoid it. I try and avoid it, but could do more. To be honest, I don't really think about it.
I would say I try to avoid it, but I could definitely do more by looking up more products.
Perfect. Okay. And what best describes your consumption of single-use plastics? This is a big, big, big problem. So single-use plastics are an example like plastic bags, plastic bottles,
Hmm.
plastic packaging for food. So cling film, for example, cling film or food wrap, just a one-time use and then throw it away. Plastic cups, straws, plastic cutlery. So do you do your utmost to avoid them? You try and avoid them but could do more, or to be honest, you don't really think about it.
I do my utmost to avoid single-use plastics.
Wonderful,
Definitely.
wonderful, wonderful. Now this is about your clothes. Your clothes. Shopping frequency, Meg. I very rarely shop for new things. I shop every now and then, and it's nothing. It is nothing that I love or avoid, shopping is important, and I love buying new things.
I would say I very rarely shop for new things.
There we go. Obviously, if you're buying and shopping for new clothes all the time, and not you buying secondhand or recycled clothes or things like that, then that is having an impact on the environment, because all the clothes that are being made are using energy to be created and basically adding to the environment in a really negative way. The quality or price, I prioritize quality and environmental labeling. Sometimes I prioritize quality and sometimes I go for low cost. I usually prioritize goods with low price rather than high quality. What do
I
you
would
think, Meg?
say B, I think. I sometimes
B.
prioritize quality, but sometimes I do go for low cost.
Fair enough, fair enough. Second hand. So this is one thing that most of you can do really, because there are plenty. If your high street is anything like mine, second hand shops are all everywhere now. Second hand shops, mobile phone shops, and barber shops are everywhere. So second hand purchases. When you buy something, it is often second hand. You buy second hand stuff every now and then. You would prefer not to use someone else's stuff. Nearly everything you buy is new.
I buy secondhand stuff every now and then. I feel like B.
So B.
Mm-hmm.
Do you give away or sell your second-hand items? This is key, because what this question is implying is, if you don't give them away or sell them, what are you doing with them? Are you throwing them away? Are you discarding them? Are you adding to the waste in the environment? So do you give away or sell second-hand items? I regularly give away and sell items I do not use. I give away and sell some stuff, but it's something I don't think about much. I usually throw away things I don't use or put them in storage.
I would say I regularly give them away, or sell them.
There we go. Recycling. I do my utmost to recycle everything correctly. I recycle most things, but recyclable items end up in the general waste bin. I pretty often throw recyclable materials in the general waste.
I recycle everything correctly.
Now, I shouldn't have to tell any of you guys what recycling is, and you should know exactly what recycling is. It's separating certain items that can be reused and reprocessed again, and it's a massively important thing. So if any of you answer B or C to this, you're in trouble. You have to really do your utmost to not put stuff in general waste bins, recycle them. Do you offset your carbon footprint, which means you fund projects that reduce CO2 emissions? Now, I'm guessing that you don't offset your carbon emissions, which
Hmm.
many people won't really. And now we come to the results, Meg. So there are some options here, guys. So we've got a climate villain that contributes more than 10 tons CO2 equivalent to carbon gases, to the greenhouse gases. We have a climate consumer that contributes 5 to 10 tons. We have a carbon friend that is 2 to 5 tons, and a carbon hero that is less than 2 tons. So the goal is to contribute less than 2 tons of greenhouse gases in your carbon footprint. Generally, if you're a carbon friend, you're doing well, but you can do more. The other two are the issues. In the chat, what do you think Meg is going to be? Someone said Meg is a climate friend.
I
I
hope
don't know. She
so,
might
but
be a
I'm not
villain. She
sure.
might be a villain. Let me know in the chat.
I do think my traveling will take me down
Yeah,
a
but you've
little
got
bit.
solar panels. Oh,
We'll
we think
see.
Meg is a climate friend. We think Meg is a climate friend.
I think
Everyone
my
thinks Meg.
food habits will be a good plus, but I'm not sure. We'll have to see. There's definitely
Yeah,
things I can work
vegetarian
on.
food habits, because obviously you're not farming animals, and so
Hmm.
you were instantly reducing a lot of gases that the animal farming produces. Lots of people are saying climate friend. One people said climate consumer. So let's
Hmm.
see, let's see if the votes are in. Which do you think you are? We'll click climate friend because most people said that. Let's see
Okay.
if we right. Let's see if we right.
I
Oh, you were a climate
did think so.
consumer. Oh, did I not click Meg's recycling in defense? Ah, don't worry about it. It's fine. If I didn't click the
Thank you,
right button
Danielle.
for Meg's recycling, well, it is what it is. But yeah, 7.1 tons of carbon
Mm,
equivalency. So consumer. So what are you doing well and what are you not doing well? Okay. So this will just give you an indication of what can you improve. Okay.
mhm,
And so we'll just go to that for now. What you can improve, Meg. So your footprint, and again, you see the travel is the big issue here.
mhm.
The car and the plane rides to all these exotic locations that you go to throughout the year and leave me alone in work. They was really impacting massively. Your home is about average and your
Mhm,
consumption. So show me how to reduce my carbon footprint anyway. So you're switching all of it, switching to a climate-friendly heating source to reduce heating emissions. So
mhm,
again, because you've got a household that's large with 4 people and it's being heated by natural gas, it's having a big impact. So if you had
mm,
different ways of kind of having an impact on that, that will really make a change. Are you in? Yes, she's in. Yeah, obviously. Reduce your medium flights. So yes, you've got to reduce the amount of flights you're having. So
mhm,
more holidays in Britain and short
mhm.
haul flights. Yes, she's ready, hopefully. And your car, switch to a more environmentally friendly one. And you
Mhm.
will. I'm sure you will. We'll club around in the chat now. We'll raise some funds to get you a new
Yeah.
electric car, man.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Always ask for environmental friendly taxi. This is the key
Mm,
thing, see, is all of these things, a lot of them are in your control. So a lot of these things, people will think, oh, climate control is not in my control. It's these big countries contributing this or that. And it's true they are, but there is still lots of things you can do as an individual to change things. And so if you use a taxi service or another service to travel, ask them, oh, what energy you're using. And if they're using an energy that you don't think is climate friendly, don't use them. Use someone else. And use your bike and walk more. We knew that was coming. Use your
mhm,
bike and walk more. That would have reduced lots. Eat more plant-based foods. I think we did that anyway. I think you're fine for that. You can do more. Aim to eat seasonally. And again,
mm.
fully eat seasonally, not just kind of now and again.
Yeah.
Composting is a really interesting thing you can do as well. So
Mhm,
composting your food waste and basically, using it as compost for growing things in your garden and things like that, if you wanted to, which hopefully all you growers and climate scientists know how to do now. Avoided palm olive products. That's a really good thing to do as well. Because again, all those cookies and candies that have palm olive oil, look at the wrapper and think, right, it's got palm oil. I won't use it. So products in clothing as well and textiles using, wood and hemp and bamboo. So things that don't have a massive environmental impact, but can really help. Shop more circular. What that means is circular. So you're keeping, there's no new things coming in and being thrown away. Everything is going round and being recycled. So it's just this constant circular shopping. So you're not buying loads of new stuff. Things are being passed on to another person. You are picking up back and forth. The amount of different items, shopping items and stuff that can impact negatively on the environment is massive. Figuring out what changes you can make is really difficult, but picking one is normally easier. So as you can see from the carbon calculator, there's loads of things Meg could do to reduce her carbon footprint. But a climate pledge is picking one thing and sticking to it and really digging deep and making sure that one thing is done better than any other. So this video, we asked other people in our museum, the Amgueddfa Cymru across the museum, what they would like to kind of make a climate pledge to. So if you listen to their answers a second, you might get some indication of
Here at Amgueddfa Cymru, we're
things you
taking
can
part
do.
in the first ever Carbon Literacy Action Day. We've been rolling out carbon literacy training across the organisation and over 100 staff have already become accredited. Here are just some of the amazing pledges that staff have actually made.
Dwi'n addo I lleihau y gres sydd yn cael ei colli trwy'r drysau yn yr Amgueddfa Cymru Rufeinig.
I pledged to switch to a green energy tariff, so I've changed my energy provider and I'm using renewable electricity and carbon offsetting for my gas usage.
Fy addewid I yw helpu codi ymwybyddiaeth drwy hyfforddi mwy o staff Amgueddfa Cymru I cwblhau'r cwrs llythrennedd Cymru.
My personal pledge is to reduce my carbon footprint, is to reduce my digital output by managing my emails and electronic filing and thereby reduce energy on the server.
My pledge is to properly insulate our roof so that we use less energy when heating our house in the winter.
Dwi'n mynd I wneud mwy o deithiau actif, sef cerdded i'r gwaith a seiclo I weld ffrindiau.
Our pledge is that the companies we use for cloud storage will have firm plans in place to become carbon neutral.
Dwi'n mynd I gynllunio yn wythnos o ran bwyta yn well a bod yn fwy ystyriol wrth siopa.
I pledge to engage and inform local communities using our social media platforms.
Ar garfa dynod gweithredu llwybennydd carbon, dwi'n addo datblygu a darparu hyfoddiant llwybennydd carbon o draws Amgueddfa Cymru.
My carbon literacy pledge has been to create a bicycle repair facility to encourage people to visit the museum by bicycle.
For Carbon Literacy Action Day, I pledge to upgrade my windows to energy-efficient triple glazing.
Fy ddewid I yw hyrwyddo llythrennedd carbon gyda'r bobl ifanc da ni'n gweithio gyda nhw.
For Carbon Literacy Action Day, I pledge to improve the energy efficiency of my home and ensure that my family live in the most energy efficient way possible.
Chris, you're on mute, sorry.
Hopefully I'm not now. And yeah, so there's a few different things you can do to make positive changes to make your climate change. So I want you to think about your daily life and how you could impact on that. So could you use less plastic? Could you save more energy? Could you maybe walk or ride or buy second-hand clothing? Choose one thing and think about it, because I want this to be an achievable thing for you guys, okay? I don't want it to be something that you'll say and then not do. So we're going to make a personal pledge now using the sheets that you've hopefully got digitally or physically in front of you. And we're going to go through it and see if you can stick to this, and hopefully you can inspire others to do it as well. So Meg, we're going to do it. And when we do it with Meg, you are going to be doing it alongside us where you are as well. So I've got my carbon literacy sheet here, and give me one sec. And so I'm going to go close up, and hopefully you've got this sheet in front of you. Now, personal pledge, you have the power to help starting to change the planet starting today. Think about your daily life. So the first thing, Meg, is name. That's an easy one for you, I think. And we'll put Meg.
Perfect.
Hopefully all of you know your names and you will be fine with that category, okay? So now is the important thing, Meg. My planet-friendly action. So out of all of the things we went through, Meg, if you could pick one thing that you know you can do and you know will have a positive impact on the environment, what would it be? And this is your pledge. You're going to keep an eye on yourself and make sure that you do it as well. So what are you going to do? And while we are doing Megs, think about you as in the classroom and start writing it down. Think about one change you can make to have a real positive impact on the climate. Meg, what do you think?
I think after using the carbon calculator and seeing how much my travel is kind of the biggest impact that I have, I think I could probably challenge myself to take more public transport and also to walk a bit more as well, to more local spots when I go shopping, things like that, and use my car less, essentially.
Use public transport, use your car less, and what was the other thing? So use public transport, use your car less.
And to walk more to local areas.
Fabulous. And to walk more to local areas. And to walk more. No bike?
I don't have a bike, but I could look
Yeah.
into biking.
Buy bike. There we go. All of those things are massively achievable, really, I think, Meg. So
Mhm.
using public transport more, using your car less, walking more, buying more. What are you guys doing at home? So in the class. So have you got anything you can write in the chat that some of the pupils in your class have been kind of thinking about what they can do to have a positive impact on the environment? So write in the chat what you're doing. This next section as well, Meg, okay,
Mhm.
is called Why It Matters. Because it is really important that you make this pledge, but turn the tap off. A classic, but a perfect one. I remember when I was young, many, many moons ago now, Meg. Whenever we'd brush our teeth, we'd have the cold water tap running. And
Mhm.
that is incredibly bad for the environment because you're just
Mhm.
running water all over the place. So stop the family from littering. Yeah, that's a good thing. Stopping littering is really, really important. And we are going to use less one-use plastics. That's really good as well. Fair play. Less one-use plastics is perfect because, again, we think Meg is a climate friend. Don't support Meg. She's destroying the world. She's But yeah, it's one of those things that I think you've got to make choices that are really easily achieved and really impactful. But the other thing, Meg, is this last section of the sheet now. So if you've got a sheet in front of you guys and you've written your name and you've written your pledge, what you're going to do, I want you to think about filling out this bit. Why it matters. Why it matters. So why are you making those changes? Why do you think it matters? Because making these changes, you might think, oh, I'll do it, just because that's what everybody wants. But knowing why you're making those changes is really important as well. So why are you making those changes, Megan?
Well, as it's one of the biggest areas that I've not been, I guess, being most aware of when I'm going about my daily routine. I'm just kind of used to getting in my car and going. So I think it'll obviously reduce my greenhouse gases that I'm using. But it'll
So
also
reducing your greenhouse gases,
Mhm.
which will ensure that you have a long and happy life on this planet, really.
Yes, yeah. And I think it just would force me to be more aware of choices that I'm making generally then. By changing one thing, it might make you want to change more.
Yes, that's perfect. I just put reducing greenhouse gases and improving the climate. But in
Mhm.
general, yeah, being more aware of why it matters. Because it does matter that we're more aware of making the
Mhm.
changes that we're doing. On this file, on this as well, there's a section saying how will you stick to it? Because obviously you can say these things, Meg, but you might not stick to it, okay? So
Mhm.
how will you stick to it? Not just for a week, but for an entire year. I want you to, whatever pledge you make, and you got to stick to it for an entire year or more,
Mhm.
but definitely for a year. So how are you going to stick to it, Meg? How are you going to make sure you stick to it?
I think by being a bit more organized and checking the bus timetables, um, and also planning out routes a bit better in terms of where I can walk, safe routes as well, um, to make sure that I'm comfortable as to where I'm walking to. I think that's really
Perfect.
important as well.
Yes. I put more planning to make it easier for me to
Yeah.
type.
No,
But
that's
more
true. Yeah.
planning is the key there, definitely.
Mhm.
So think about that in the classrooms where you run now, guys. How are you actually going to achieve this? And that's why you've got to make a climate pledge that's achievable. Because if you can't stick to it, then you might as well not do it in the first place, really. But yeah, underneath that is a tracker that helps you track your progress. So you might not need this tracker, but it's there to help you kind of make a note of the actions you've done and the dates you've done and the things you've changed for the better, really. But yeah, that is our climate pledge. But it doesn't stop there, though, Meg. It does not stop there at all. Because like Amgueddfa Cymru, we made lots and lots of positive changes. And basically, let me get this back up. Amgueddfa Cymru has 7 sites overall. And out of these 7 sites, lots of them basically contributed to making changes as an organization. So you heard what the individuals working with me did, but these are ones that the organization made overall. So we've got the National Wool Museum over in West Wales, and they use non-toxic chemicals when dyeing wool. So that's a really good positive impact. The National Waterfront Museum in Swansea has a garden that grows and recycles food and gives it out to the most needy in the community, which is a brilliant thing to do for your environment. The National Museum of Cardiff is full of scientists that experiment and do different investigations on climate impact, looking at the past and looking at the future. St. Fagan's Museum, where I am based now, where I am talking to you from, we always explore building our buildings using sustainable building practices and heating sources that are sustainable and good for the environment, really. And Big Pit, the National Coal Museum. It's a good example, this, of how sometimes an organisation just doing less helps the environment develop, because Big Pit had many coal tips scattered around this environment and its landscape. And what they did is, when coal tipping stopped, when the coal stopped, they just allowed nature to reclaim those spaces. And nature has done an amazing job with the coal tips all across South Wales in reclaiming those places and becoming new environments for animals and wildlife and plants. Now we come to your school. This is a team pledge, and I don't want you doing this now at all, okay? So don't worry about thinking about this now, but this is a project that I really want you all to do either later today or tomorrow or some other time in your class. And I want you to do exactly what we've done for personal pledges, but do it for the school overall. So how can your school make an pledge to change something that has a really positive impact on the environment? How can your school make some sort of physical, really positive change to make change, reduce climate change? So it might be reducing energy, it might be using different types of material in the canteens, or it might be lots of different things. But you've got to sit down as a class and discuss what changes you can make as a school, what you do well, what you don't do well, and then commit to a pledge overall and see if you can achieve that pledge, really. Do that and make sure you let us know, via Professor Plant, Twitter, or via anything, really, email or whatever. So as well, we have got a climate resource that I'll give a link to in the chat afterwards. And that is basically all we've got today. It's the final virtual session for spring bulbs, and hopefully you've got an idea of what a carbon footprint is, what changes you can make to the environment around you, and indeed you will make some positive changes, because keep in mind the science work you were doing for the Spring Bulbs for School project is really giving us information that's telling us that we need to make changes. So definitely try to make some changes wherever you can. And that leads me to the final thing I will leave you. Our winner of the competition to name a daffodil variety. The winner was Mountain Lane Primary School. And so that daffodil you see there is now named Seren a Granwen, which translates from Welsh into English as Spring Star, or the Star of Spring. And yeah, it's an amazing name. And now Mountain Lane Primary School have been given bulbs full, a pot full of bulbs of Seren a Granwen, and they will be growing this daffodil for the first time in Wales, because this was cultivated in Ireland, in Esca Farm. And now they're going to be the first place in Wales and mainland Britain, really, to have Seren a Granwen daffodils in their schoolyard. So very well done for Mountain Lane Primary School. You've done an amazing job coming up with that name, and we hope you grow many varieties of daffodil in the years to come. Thank you all very much for being part of the sessions today. Thank you, Megan, for being our guinea pig. I hope you've all enjoyed, and if you've got any feedback or anything, then I will send an email out later to get feedback. But hopefully you will all stick to your climate pledges. I'll make sure Meg sticks to her climate pledge, don't worry. And yeah, thank you very much for being part of the session today, and we hope you have a very good day. Hwyl fawr.